like to visit for a little bit about your engine overhaul. Two of the questions that we often receive from potential customers is what new parts will I get in my engine overhaul, and to what standard will my engine be overhauled? I've laid out on this table the parts that go into a typical W670 engine overhaul. We've got all the cylinder parts over here, new intake valves, exhaust valves, springs, guides, the new pistons. These are the exhaust liners that we looked at earlier. Then we move over to the roller bearings. There are the new roller bearings that we talked about. New thrust bearing, new master rod assembly. We have rocker arm bearings. This is the shielded wire that will go into that unshielded wiring harness to make a new shielded harness. The carburetor, tappets and rollers. Got piston rings and a complete gasket set here. Now obviously some engines, if they're in very poor condition, will take many more parts than this, enough parts to load another table if we have to replace all the gears and just everything in the engine. And there are a few engines that come in that take fewer parts than this. You know, some engines that we see only have a test run time on them, or only 100 hours, but it was 30 years ago, and so obviously that engine would take fewer parts than your average engine. But this is an average engine. What you can be assured of, though, is that every engine that leaves here will have the new pistons in it, and it will have the new roller bearings. Those are mods that I feel are just absolutely essentials to uphold the standard of quality that we want to see with the engines that leave here. Now, the question about what standard will my engine be overhauled to, there are many confusing terms that are surrounding engine overhauls. Terms like rebuilt, overhauled, repaired, factory new, zero time, remanufactured. Some of those words have actually specific definitions. Some of those words are just advertising terms. Now, overhauled is a very specific term in FAA understanding, and it actually has a definition. Overhauled indicates a component that has been repaired and tested. All right? So if you receive an engine from a shop that was overhauled but not test run, technically that was not an overhauled engine, because in the overhaul manual, in order to meet the criterion for an overhaul, there's a test run that has to be done. And so from the FAA's perspective, that engine was only repaired and not overhauled because it was never tested. Okay? On the other hand, if there's a component that there is no specific test for in the overhaul manual, that part can only be repaired and not overhauled. So in other words, we could repair a Continental thrust bearing cover, and we could do whatever repair that it calls out in the manual, but we can't overhaul it because there's no specific test procedure for a thrust bearing cover in the overhaul manual. So the concept of overhauled and repaired, the overhauled engines that we are turning out are engines that have been overhauled to factory new limits. Okay, so what does that mean? If we go to the W670 table of limits, we'll see that at the top of the table of limits there is a description of limit, which gives the part that we're going to talk about. Then there is the manufacturer's minimum, the manufacturer's maximum, the desired clearance, and then replace beyond, or the service limit. If we go down to number 53 in near the bottom of the page, we come to the exhaust valve in the guide. And if we move over, we'll see that the manufacturer's minimum clearance for that was 3,500 sluice. The manufacturer's maximum clearance for that was 5,500 sluice. Their desired number was 4,500 sluice, and replace beyond, or the service limit, was 8 thousandths loose. So what that means is that when Continental built this part and reamed that guide, they were shooting for 4.5 thousandths clearance between the valve and the guide. But anything between 3.5 thousandths and 5.5 thousandths was considered to be a new part. Now, as the part would wear, it would wear out to 5, 6, 7 thousandths. When it reached 8 thousandths, that was as far as it could go before it was no longer serviceable. So we replaced it beyond 8 thousandths. Now, the tricky thing about this is that you could overhaul an engine and leave a valve guide in there that was at 7 thousandths, and that would be a legal overhaul. It wouldn't be something that the customer is going to be happy with for very long, because after 100 hours or so, he's going to be at 8 thousandths, and it will no longer be serviceable. You'll be leaking oil past the valve guide, and you'll just have an unhappy situation. So what the standard that we are going by is anything between the manufacturer's minimum and the manufacturer's maximum is what we'll be shooting for. So in other words, if Continental called it a new part, then it's good enough for us. All right. I'd also like to show you our catalog. This is our Vintage Aero Parts catalog that we publish. This is a brand new version of it. We've been doing this for about 20 years. And this has all of the Continental W670 parts, the Lycoming R680 parts, and the Jacobs R755 and 915 parts in our inventory is in this book. And if you would like to have a copy of this, if you'll just contact me either by phone or email, we would be happy to send you a copy of this. It's also got some interesting information in it about the engine as far as the weights and the clearances and valve timing and things like that. So it's useful for things other than just the parts. All right. Well, a question that you might ask is really, why should I have Radial Engines Limited overhaul my engine? Now, this is going to be my little sales pitch. Honestly, our quality is first rate. We have assembled a crew of guys here that are truly the best in the business. They are very skilled. Most of them have been with me for 10 years. A couple of them have been with me for 20 years. They truly take pride in their work. We're using the finest quality parts that money can buy, and we are assembling them the same way that they were assembled in 1941 or 1942 in the Continental factory. We go above and beyond where detail is concerned. These engines were not individually balanced from the factory. The factory got the pistons and link rods fairly close to each other and then just started assembling engines. We go beyond that. We balance every rotating assembly and every reciprocating assembly against one another. So we take the pistons, we weigh them all on a scale, we weigh all the piston pins, all the link rods, all the knuckle pins, and then we match heavier pistons with lighter link rods, and then put the lighter pistons with the heavier link rods and balance these things back and forth, so that by the time we get finished, the reciprocating parts are within 2 or 3 grams of each other. 3 grams is the weight of a paper towel, so that's very accurate, and it really does make a lot of difference as far as the vibration that you see in these engines. It cuts down on that dramatically. If you weigh a stock W670 piston and then compare that to a plus 20 W670 piston, sometimes you'll find as much as 60 or 70 grams difference, and yet it was legal for both of those pistons to be in the same engine. And so it's no wonder that 7-cylinder engines got somewhat of a reputation for vibrating somewhat. Another thing that we have chosen to do is years ago we became an FAA certified repair station. Now, there are really 2 tacks that a repair facility can take. One is to lay as low as possible to stay under the radar, hope the FAA never finds you and never learns where you live. The other is to open the doors, let them know where you are, invite them in, and invite the surveillance that comes with that relationship. We have really chosen to do that, and I think that was a good thing. We have an excellent relationship with the FAA, and they do hold us to a higher standard. We have a couple of manuals here that we have developed specifically because the FAA made us do it. This is our repair station and quality control manual. This tells us how things are going to be done in the repair station, and the FAA holds us to this. The standards of quality, the standards that all of our equipment has to be calibrated regularly. Those things are things that if you're just an A&P mechanic out there overhauling these engines, the FAA never checks on that, and you may or may not have your torque wrench calibrated or have your micrometers calibrated. We calibrate them every year because it's mandated. This is our training program. We've actually developed a training program with FAA guidelines so that that everybody in this shop is not only being trained originally when they come in, but they're being cross-trained so that that people in final assembly are learning about the entire inspection procedure, and the inspectors are assembling engines, and we have a lot of cross-training going on so that everybody in the shop understands everything that there is to know about these engines. Now, we have become the largest repair station in the world that overhauls these engines. In fact, every year we overhaul more of these engines than all of our competitors combined. There's a reason for that. We have a combined 170 years of experience. We have hundreds of engines under our belt. We may not have seen everything that a W670 Continental can do, but we've seen a lot of what it can do, and there aren't many surprises anymore. Every once in a while, one will surprise us, like that one we talked about earlier with the bent number 2 link rod from a fuel lock. I'd never seen that before, but we've seen just about everything that a W670 can do. Another thing is our service after the sale is the best in the business. Waco's old slogan was "Ask any pilot," and that was pretty bold. I can't say ask any pilot about our engines because there are a lot of pilots that haven't flown our engines, but I certainly would say ask any of our customers. We service these engines from the time that we deliver it until it's run out again 1,000 hours later, and don't stop giving customer service. Another thing that we provide for you is very thorough documentation. This is a document package for an engine that we did recently, and in this package you'll find your logbook. We have the work order, which gives all the parts that went into the engine and the instructions that were given to us at the time that we overhauled it. We have a preliminary inspection that we did when the engine first arrived in our shop before we worked on it at all, to verify that those serial numbers matched and that the magnetos were the right model, and we did everything that we could do before we started overhauling the engine. Then we have 3 pages of in-process inspection. Every part that went into that engine is spelled out in these pages. If you want to know what the clearance was between your master rod bearing and your crank pin, it's written down here. So you can go through in these pages and find everything that happened in your overhaul. This is a crankshaft inspection worksheet that tells everything that we did to the crankshaft during the overhaul. Here's the cam timing and reciprocating mass worksheet. This is where we both did the cam timing when we set the cam up to the crankshaft, and also the balance, so you can see exactly what was done as far as how much each part weighed. This particular one, we had it down to 1.2 grams, so it was less than half the weight of a paper towel. Here's the ignition harness inspection, everything that was done during the repair to the ignition harness. magnetos, everything that was done to the magnetos. Here's the engine test log, the RPMs that it was run at, the time that it was run at, temperatures, pressures, compression test after the run, everything that you'd want to know about that. Here's the engine final inspection. So this is when it was, the safetying was being done for the final time before you get your engine. And then we have the 8130-3 forms, the authorized release certificate, this being for the magnetos, this one for the engine, and this one for the carburetor. So we give you just, I think, probably more paperwork and more details about your overhaul than you'll find really anywhere else. Do you want special cosmetics? We can detail your engine in any way that you'd like. We have had people come to us that wanted a bone stock engine. They had a Stearman that they were restoring, and they wanted it to look as if it had just left Boeing Wichita in 1942. We can build an engine that all the CAD plating will be correct, the cylinders will be black, the cases will be the exact Continental gray color that they had leaving the factory. In fact, we'll even put flatteners in the paint so that you don't get the modern gloss, but it'll be a little bit flat. We can go all the way from that end to as highly detailed as you can imagine. We've painted engines with yellow cases, black cylinders, and yellow rocker covers. Look like a bumblebee. We've painted green cases with natural aluminum cylinders. We've painted blue cases, red cases. This Jacobs engine was probably one of the most highly detailed engines that we had ever done. You can see that we actually polished the nose case. The cases were polished. There was a lot of extra chrome work on it. The exhaust system, stainless steel exhaust system and shrouds were polished. The cylinders were painted black, but not before we had block sanded the edges of all the fins, polished the edges of the fins, and then masked them so that they wouldn't be painted when the cylinders were painted. And so it was quite a striking engine, not one that everybody would want, but we can pretty much detail it any way you would like. All right. Now, one other thing that we do is we have what's called the Active Observer Program. And in the Active Observer Program, we invite you as the customer to come in and be as much a part of your engine overhaul as you would like to be. We have had people that would come in for a day to watch their engine on the test cell. We've had people come in for 2 or 3 days and watch their engine be assembled. We also had one fellow who said, I really want to be a part of this. If I delivered my engine, could I just stay there with it and help out until it was done? And he came and he washed parts and he worked alongside the mechanics under their supervision, doing various little projects on his engine. And about 10 days later, he went home with his engine that he had helped overhaul. And he looked like he was having fun, and we got a call from him a couple of months later, and he said, you know, I enjoyed that so much, I just bought another engine, I want to do it again, so when can we schedule my other engine? So anyway, that Active Observer Program, you're welcome to come and be as much a part of your overhaul as you would like. Also, if you would like to send your mechanic, it would be fine for him to come and become familiar with the engine as we're overhauling it. Okay, so you might ask then, with all that, why would I not want a Radial Engines overhaul? You need to know that because of the demand for our engines, sometimes it takes a while for us to get them out. I would love to have an engine sitting on the shelf ready to ship to anybody that needs one immediately, and the truth is that we stay back ordered. And so that's not altogether a bad thing either. If we had engines sitting on the shelf and we're sitting around unable to sell them, I might wonder about the quality of our engine. But as it is, we have a waiting list, and the time on that waiting list varies. So if you're doing a restoration and you're thinking about that you'd like to order an engine, give yourself some time and call me and talk to me about that, and we'll talk about our schedule at that point. Well, this brings us to an end of our time together. I hope that you found this information to be of help in understanding your Continental. I welcome comments and look forward to hearing from you. So until next time, remember, radial engines do not leak oil. They're just marking their territory.